Losing on literacy is the topic. The Public Affairs Research Council of Louisiana, PAR, puts together a monthly webinar series. This was the one for this month, and PAR President Stephen Procopio is here to discuss and share the highlights of something, Stephen, that is not a highlight, and that is literacy in Louisiana, public education.
That's true. Less than half of our third graders can read on level what they're expected to do. It's a serious problem. We haven't made a whole lot of gains over the past decade.
Yeah, the past decade, no gains at all.
Right.
Flatline, I think, is what
right.
Cade Brumley called it, superintendent of
That's
schools.
right. Yeah.
And he also calls it lost on literacy. And yet, even though he says that, there are some positives happening.
Exactly. There's been a lot of activity in the past legislative session, and then he actually has a proposal as well that lines up in many ways with it. This is all coming from Mississippi. Mississippi in 2013 put together a literacy package that had a lot of things in it, but probably the one that got the most attention is that you couldn't get promoted to the fourth grade unless you were reading on level.
So the grades we're looking at are K through third grade?
K through third grade,
okay.
Right, and then get promoted into the fourth grade.
Okay, and not beyond that though, or?
No, I think that's really the big thrust of what.
Got it.
Beyond that, it's harder and harder to make gains.
So what has to be accomplished at the third grade level to move on to fourth?
So you have to be able to, well, again, depends on exactly what we end up. These proposals haven't been adopted yet, but you have to be able to read on grade level in the third grade to move over to the fourth grade. So you have to have screening that goes on, so you're not just catching it at the end. You have to have teachers that are trained to teach the science of literacy. In Louisiana, we also required for certification, for new certification, that you are also have to pass a test that you know how to train it. So we've done a lot of work.
Okay.
That's sort of the only component that's not real there is this promotion aspect.
And then moving people forward. So would it be, if you're not promoted, you haven't learned what you need to learn, then you've got to go into some sort of extra session of school.
Well, yeah, you can't move forward to the next grade, but
summer school.
Superintendent Brumley, he likes to support more like a summer camp rather than summer school.
Okay.
So there'd be other electives that you could take, and he was proposing 30 hours of remediation you would take during the summer, and maybe other electives as well to help bring you up to reading level if you're not doing what you're supposed to do at that point.
And so where is the funding coming from for the summer school, for the teachers who will be there to be paid?
Well, this is the big point of contention between what the people are proposing, either Representative Richard Nelson, or the superintendent, and some of the local superintendents are like, now we have to implement this, how are we going to pay for it? So the supporters of having these extra literacy programs and holding people back, their money is supposed to come from really, as in the short term, this extra COVID money we have. We have a lot of extra money from the federal government to help us bounce back from COVID, including some of the losses that we had because we had to go hybrid and we couldn't do what we wanted to do. The superintendents say that, well, that money's already accounted for. We have it some places in our budget. So that could be difficult if they've already budgeted someplace else and you're wanting them to use that for the extra expenses that are going to incur. Not to mention, you're going to have extra teachers. And even if you had the money, you're going to have to find them. As we know, there's sort of a teacher shortage that we're trying to find qualified teachers, much less teachers that will be able to teach literacy.
All right, so this hasn't been adopted. What has to happen for it to be adopted? And is that just another period of time where this is not being accomplished?
So there's really two proposals, and they overlap. But there is the superintendent's proposal, which would go to Bessie. I believe in October is what he's looking to bring it to, where that would be something that's adopted by Bessie. There's also, there was a proposal in last session's legislative proposal, and that was Richard Nelson, who said he was going to make it a law. So, and he has been clear that he intends to bring that law back. So that is a second proposal, and they both overlap some. They're not exactly the same thing, but they both have this promotion based upon literacy, but the details vary in terms of how many grades do you look at and what would be the response if you don't.
Right, but something that needs to happen right now, there's a lag of time before it could happen?
Well, yes. I mean, and so the one side is like, look, we're behind on literacy, every second counts. On the other hand is that this will be a giant proposal, so that the local school systems also want to know, well, how are we going to do this? We can't do this immediately. We're going to have to gear up as well and find funding sources for it. So while it does need to get done, we have to make sure it's done properly. So I do understand both sides.
Correct. Tell me about the monthly webinar series briefly that PAR does.
Sure. This is a monthly webinar series where we take a different topic, usually something that's in PAR's wheelhouse. We usually focus on funding. We cover the state legislature. We look at coastal erosion. We do lots of education topics. So we're doing this one, on literacy, but we've also looked at the teacher shortage as one. So we have a different topic every month that we're going to be looking at.
And because you're doing that, we will cover it.
That's great to hear.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Literacy is definitely one of those topics that we'll keep hearing about this year.
Yeah, sure is. And Louisiana's literacy rates have flatlined since 2011.
Wow.